Okay, so the Department of Homeland Security, the agency tasked with stopping waste, fraud, and abuse, spent $220 million of your money on television commercials starring the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, awarded the bulk of that contract to a shell company that didn't exist 11 days before it got the deal, which then secretly funneled the money to a firm that worked on said secretary's campaign for governor and is run by the husband of said secretary's own spokeswoman. And when asked about it under oath, said secretary explained that she had absolutely nothing to do with any of it, which is apparently what they're calling by-the-book contracting these days. What you're about to watch is a Republican senator, not a Democrat, a Republican, grilling Kristi Noem at a Senate oversight hearing yesterday about a $220 million ad campaign in which she is the star, the contracts for which were handed to firms with deep personal and financial ties directly back to her. Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, who is not exactly known for leaning to the left, was so disturbed by what he found that he told Noem the spending puts the president in a terribly awkward spot, which, coming from a man who has spent years enthusiastically defending Trump, is the political equivalent of a 5-alarm fire. As usual, let's watch the hearing, and I will break it down for you at the end.
I believe you have a policy, Madam Secretary, that you have to approve all contracts at your department over $100 million.
No, sir. I have a policy in place that I review contracts. My deputy chiefs have the ability to review anything under $5 million. Above that, I evaluate and look at.
Okay. And you do that, I understand, to try to curb waste and abuse of taxpayer money. Is that right?
Yes, sir. In fact, it's been extremely effective. We've saved the taxpayers over $13.2 billion just by evaluating contracts, negotiating lower ones, and canceling ones that aren't necessary to do our duties.
How do you square that concern for waste, which I share, with the fact that you have spent $220 million running television advertisements that feature you prominently?
Sir, the president tasked me with getting the message out to the country and to other countries where we were seeing the invasion come from, with putting commercials out that told them that if they were in this country illegally, that they needed to leave, or we would detain them and remove them, and they'd not get the chance to come back to America the right way. That has been extremely effective.
Ask you to run these advertisements, is that right?
We had that conversation, yes, before I was put in this position and sworn in and confirmed, and since then as well.
Okay. Did you bid out those service contracts?
Yes, they did. They went out to a competitive bid, and career officials at the department chose who would do those advertising commercials.
And the people that you ended up picking were people who had formerly done your political work back in South Dakota, is that right?
No, that's not correct, sir.
I think it is.
No, it's not, sir. The individuals who, I believe the careers who they chose were two different media firms. There's been conversation about their subcontractors, but we have no legal authority to look into subcontractors on work like that.
Okay. And you're saying that you're testifying that President Trump approved this ahead of time? Is that my understanding?
We had conversations about making sure that we were telling people.
No, ma'am. I'm asking you, sorry to interrupt, but the president approved ahead of time you spending $220 million running TV ads across the country in which you are featured prominently.
Yes, sir. We went through the legal processes, did it correctly.
Did the president know you were going to do
OMB.
this?
Yes.
He did?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
And one thing, Senator, I think would be helpful to know is how effective that communications has been. That
Well, they were
overwhelmingly
effective in your name recognition. I mean, I personally just, I mean, to me, it puts the president in a terribly awkward spot. And I'm not saying you're not telling the truth. It's just hard for me to believe, knowing the president, as I do, that you said, Mr. President, here's some ads I've cut, and I'm going to spend $220 million running them, that he would have agreed to that. I don't think Russ Vogt at OMB would have agreed to that. It's something we have to defend. I'm on the Appropriations Committee. My research shows that you did not bid them out, that you pick, in fact, one of the people you picked, the strategy group, Safe America Media was a company formed 11 days before you picked them, and that the strategy group got most of the money, and the head of that is married to your former spokesperson. Look, we all have friends who are qualified. I'm not quibbling with that. It troubles me. A fifth to a quarter of $1 billion of taxpayer money when we're scratching for every penny and we're fighting over rescission packages. I just can't agree with, Madam Secretary. Are you still running those ads?
No, Senator, I did not have anything to do with picking those contractors. No politicals at the Department of Homeland Security did.
I understand. Are you
Career
still running
officials
those
followed
ads?
the competitive bid process for
Are you
that.
still running
Everything
those
was,
ads?
I think the ads are due to end here in March, I think within a week
So
or two.
they
I'm
are
not sure of the
still running?
update. The one that is running is focusing on angel families. Have you seen that? It is the one that's talking about this is our why. This is why we work every day.
Okay.
Is for the angel
I've gotta
families
move
and their
on.
victims that need to.
Okay. So I want to validate exactly what you're feeling right now, which is something is very wrong here and she knows it. That is not a feeling. That is a conclusion backed by a paper trail. And I want to walk you through what you didn't see in that clip. Here is the structure of this deal, because this is where it gets genuinely shocking. According to a November 2025 ProPublica investigation, and I want to be really clear here, this is ProPublica, a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative news organization, the kind of outlet that wins the highest journalism award in the country, not a partisan blog. The DHS ad budget tripled in the most recent fiscal year, with contracts totaling $220 million going to two firms. The majority, $143 million, went to a Delaware-based company called Safe America Media. That company was created just days before it received the contract. The remaining $77 million went to a Louisiana Republican ad firm called People Who Think, LLC. So right away, we have a company that is practically a newborn, 11 days old, when it got a federal contract worth more than $100 million. And already we should be asking questions, but here is the part they don't want you to know about. How Safe America Media distributed that $143 million is unknown. Any secondary companies hired to do the actual work on the DHS ads are not disclosed in government contract records. That's by design. The money goes in, it disappears into a black box, and out the other side emerges. What a coincidence. A firm called the Strategy Group. Now, why does the Strategy Group matter? The Strategy Group was involved with Noem's 2022 campaign for governor, and the company's CEO is married to former DHS spokeswoman Tricia McLaughlin. Just a recap. The office funding the ad contracts is listed as the DHS Office of Public Affairs, which is run by McLaughlin. McLaughlin's husband runs the firm that got the money. But sure, career officials. Sure. And here is the legal trick that made all of this possible. According to the ProPublica investigation, DHS invoked a national emergency at the southern border to bypass competitive bidding rules for the massive $220 million advertising campaign. Under federal contracting law, the specific rules that govern how the government is supposed to spend your money, agencies are normally required to hold open, fair competitions for contracts of this size. This loophole is only supposed to be used in genuine emergencies like a hurricane or a wartime supply shortage. A federal document revealed that DHS cited Trump's national emergency declaration at the U.S.-Mexico border as justification for skipping standard bidding procedures, calling it an unusual and compelling urgency, and stating that DHS required an immediate, domestic, and international campaign to instruct undocumented immigrants to leave. The border emergency, which had already been declared months earlier, was then used as the reason they couldn't take the time to find out who else might want a $220 million contract besides her friends. Convenient timing. Now, you heard Noem say multiple times, career officials chose the contractors. I want you to hold that against this fact. In June 2025, Secretary Noem issued a formal directive requiring her sign-off on any DHS obligation above $100,000, a policy confirmed by Federal News Network, the Project on Government Oversight, and letters from multiple senators. $100,000. She set that policy herself, so she wants credit for personal oversight of any contract worth more than $100,000. But when it comes to a $143 million contract that happened to go to her campaign firm through a shell company, suddenly she was totally hands-off and the career guys handled it. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I can do basic math, and this math does not math, and this isn't even the first time. In 2023, then Governor Noem allegedly intervened to ensure the strategy group received an $8.5 million state contract. The same year, a firm connected to that same political network paid Madison Sheehan, then one of Noem's aides, and currently the deputy director of ICE, up to $25,000 for consulting. Charles Tiefer, a former member of the Commission on Wartime Contracting, told ProPublica the whole arrangement is, and I'm quoting directly here, corrupt is the word, adding that hiding your friends as subcontractors is like playing hide the salami with the taxpayer. So here's the language you can use when you explain this to someone else. The Secretary of Homeland Security used a national emergency declaration meant for actual crises to get around the competitive bidding process required by law, handed a $143 million contract to a shell company that had existed for less than 2 weeks, which then secretly routed that money to a firm that worked on her own political campaigns, all while publicly claiming she reviews every contract over $100,000 for waste and abuse. That is not bureaucratic sloppiness. That is a system, and it worked exactly as designed. So what does this actually mean for you? It means that while you are working and paying taxes and watching the government tell you it is laser focused on eliminating wasteful spending, and while the same administration is cutting Medicaid, slashing education budgets, and dismantling FEMA, $220 million of your money went to fund a TV commercial where a cabinet secretary in a cowboy hat tells immigrants they'll be punished at a location she chose on the second day of a government shutdown she was a part of creating. That's like your landlord raising your rent and then showing up to film a TikTok about fiscal responsibility in your living room. The DHS advertising budget tripled in the most recent fiscal year as a result of this campaign, according to Bloomberg. What this means for our institutions is that emergency powers, which exist as a narrow legal valve to be opened in genuine crises, are now being used as a routine way to get around the laws that are supposed to prevent corruption. This is part of a broader pattern. A clear trend has emerged where emergency justifications are being used to award massive no-bid contracts to established players, while the sheer volume of available funding has overwhelmed the government's capacity to provide meaningful oversight. When oversight becomes a formality and accountability becomes optional, the money doesn't stop flowing, it just starts flowing in a very specific direction. So what is this actually for? Not for border security. Kennedy himself said the ads were effective in your name recognition, not to warn migrants who don't primarily make their decisions based on cable television buys in English. The stated reason is deterrence. The actual reason is a campaign. A $220 million taxpayer-funded, handed out without competition political advertisement for the personal brand of someone whose public image has been in freefall since she wrote a book about shooting her own dog and called it a leadership lesson. And look, I try to be charitable, but if the first thing you need $220 million to rehabilitate is your image after the dog chapter, that is a unique problem that no amount of horseback riding at Mount Rushmore is going to fix. But it's worth noting that Scott Amy, general counsel at the Project on Government Oversight, told ProPublica directly that this situation is worthy of an investigation to ferret out how these decisions were made and whether they were made legally and without bias. And multiple Senate Democrats have already formally requested a DHS Inspector General investigation, while a Republican senator delivered unusually blunt public criticism on the record. The fact that a Republican senator sat across from this secretary and said, on the record, I just can't agree with this, that's not nothing. That's a window cracking open in a room that was sealed shut. Here's where things stand. The DHS Office of Inspector General has reportedly been accused by Senator Tom Tillis of stalling investigations related to Noem, with Tillis questioning how bad it has to be for the OIG in this agency to come out and do this publicly. The ads are still running, Noem acknowledged at the hearing. They continue at least through this month. And as of this taping, the White House has not confirmed whether Trump actually approved the $220 million spend, despite Noem's insistence that he did. This isn't really about whether she looked good in chaps on a horse at Mount Rushmore, though, as a side note, she did choose a government shutdown to film that, so the optics there are doing a lot of work. This is about whether the word emergency in federal law has any meaning left at all, or whether it has become a master key that any executive branch official can use to unlock the Treasury and hand money to their friends and then point to career officials when the receipts show up. The party that calls itself the guardian of responsible spending just watched one of its own cabinet secretaries spend $250 million of taxpayer money on her own television career. And the most damning thing said about it came from a Republican in the same room. That tells you less about her than it does about how thoroughly the word accountability has been hollowed out from the inside. Although, I will say, if you're going to make a $220 million argument that you're an effective leader, you probably shouldn't also be on record in a book explaining how you failed to train what was essentially a puppy and then shot it in a gravel pit and called that a tough choice. The vibes are not cohering. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to like the video and share it so more people can see it. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think about this story. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you don't miss the next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.